Hey guys, this is Nick here with What Game Now, and we're actually back with some more Warcaster Neo-Mechanika content here. The new Kickstarter is launched for Collision Course, the first expansion in Warcaster Neo-Mechanika. It's going to add in our first new faction, which is Aliens, by the way, and it's also going to include vehicles as well as some other options. So, before we get going into that, let's talk about the Kickstarter itself, because there's always controversy when a company does Kickstarter if that company is viewed to be sufficiently large to not need it. Privateer Press has put up explaining why they go through Kickstarter, and basically what's happened is there's so many miniature games nowadays that distributors are very wary to carry new product, and it's not just Privateer Press. Privateer Press has done some things. They used to be one of the golden children that had a lot of retailer space, but that's dropped off in recent years. And a lot of other miniature games struggle with this. Heavy Gear is a good example. Doesn't really go through distribution. Infinity, it's available somewhat through distribution. There are some distributors that will carry a little bit of Infinity, but usually not a ton, unless you're Asmodee, which covers Fantasy Flight Games as well, or Games Workshop. I mean, you're pretty much it. Even Cool Mini or Not has some availability issues. Flames of War. So what they did is they said, well, we're in a conundrum. In order for distributors to carry the game, we need to prove that there's demand for the game. In order to prove there's demand for the game, you need to sell the game. But how do you sell the game if distributors don't carry it? And their answer was Kickstarter. A couple of notes I want to mention about Kickstarter. It's a little annoying that this is launching when it is because the first retailer wave of Wave 1 hasn't actually made available yet. Now, granted, it's a month behind schedule because COVID, but still, it's kind of odd that they didn't at least wait until Friday or something like that. They did say it was a timing thing with manufacturers to hit the launch day they wanted. They needed to launch at this time. Okay, fine. Um, just as before, they are offering retailer pledges. You can, if you're a retailer, you can get in on this, and get a pretty hefty discount too. I mean, it's profitable for a retailer to run this through Kickstarter. And you also get a lot of the add-on bonuses too, which is I know a issue where people say, "Oh, well, I don't go through my retailer because I want the add-ons." Well, the retailer can get the add-ons too. It's also worth noting that nothing from the first Kickstarter that I can see is available in the second Kickstarter in terms of, add-ons or anything like that. So all that existing material, you have to go through to your store, to a retailer to purchase that. So it's not like they're just completely getting around that. And that was a concern that I know that I had going forward was, well, why would I go to retail if I can just always buy it for the next Kickstarter? Well, the answer is you can't. So without further ado, let's get jumping into what they've talked about. First off, we have a new faction, the Empyreans. These are aliens. So what they are is when humans showed up in the Sirius galaxy 5,000 years ago, the galaxy was not empty. It was inhabited by these Empyreans who had effectively used a machine army to conquer the galaxy and consume the souls of as many living creatures as they could. Humanity pushed them back because, quite frankly, the Empyreans weren't expecting humanity from at all. And then, in addition to that, they just weren't prepared for a large-scale conflict. So the Empyreans were pushed back, and well, they're back now. They are the masters of Ark. They've been dealing with it longer than humanity has arguably existed, and it is time for their return. And I just remembered something I do want to point out. I did say that none of the previous stuff is available. You can get a command group starter set in some of the pledge levels, but other than that, I didn't see anything for the existing factions. So, new faction, Empyreans, they are launching with everything to put them on par with the other factions. So they're going to get a new vehicle, they're going to get a heavy, they're going to get light, they're going to get variants on those, they're going to get all the solos, they're going to get a hero, so on and so forth. And also a full set of wild cards. And then launching with these guys is a new expansion booklet. The expansion booklet is going to cover the new rules for Collision Course, which is the vehicles. There's also a new thing called mantlets that we've seen, as well as a new game mode. And that game mode is essentially a vehicle race. I forget exactly what they called it, but it is a vehicle race form or a vehicle race format where you get a vehicle, it's jacked up, has super powerful stats in comparison to its normal comparisons. And then it says, all right, go race. let's go ahead and take a race and see who can win. And then there's objectives with that and everything, which is, I think, pretty cool. You know, one of the complaints people have is, oh, there's only one way to play. Well, no, not anymore. There's, in this case now, not only do you have the two different game sizes, which are dramatically different ways to play. I know some people might not see it that way. They are completely different games, but now we've also got this vehicle race format, and it sounds entertaining, at least. I don't know how much I'm going to get into it just because obviously I need a whole lot more information with it. But yeah, and you know, something to look forward to. So aside from that, we have the faction coming out. There's 24 brand new Cypher cards, bringing the deck up to 48 potential cards, including faction-specific ones, which is really cool and interesting. They've shown off one of each for the new factions. We don't know how many there's going to be that are faction-specific, but we know there's at least one for everybody. So let's go ahead and talk about the Empyreans here. So the Empyrean core box is presented right there in the middle. It includes the standard cards and everything. I'll be curious to see which deck it comes with for the Cypher cards. Because now that we have new Cyphers, I want to know, where are these available? Are they going to be a little separate pack, or do they come with the expansion booklet? I don't know. I'm curious. They are getting a unit, 2 solos, and a light warjack in there. I believe it's the Factotum and the Saber Guardians and an Oculus are the characters. And then the warjack is called a Demon. They're also getting a variant, plus variant weapons and Cortex, a heavy warjack with 2 variants with Cortex options, 3 solos, the Factotum, the Aerolith, and the Oculus. Interesting names. It looks like 3 squads, the Saber Guardians, the Saber Strike Force, and the Saber Vanguards. They're getting a hero, Astraeus, a vehicle called the Zenith, and access to 3 wild cards. Those wild cards also each will play for one of the other existing factions. So everyone will have an in-house character and 3 available wild cards, which I like the parity. On the whole, it's a very interesting aesthetic. A lot of people have likened it to like a Protoss feel from StarCraft. And I've seen a few people who have already kind of done some mock-ups with a very gold and blue color scheme, and they look fantastic. So I'll be really curious to see these guys painted up. We actually do have some of their stats. We've got all of their core box as well as their vehicle. So we can go ahead and talk about those for a little bit here. Obviously, these are not final. Things are allowed to change. What they said is a lot of the Empyrean stuff is pretty generic stat-wise, but where they're going to get crazy is they have some unique rules. For example, if you were to look at the center 2 columns here, the Oculus is a good example. Arc Capacitor. When you channel a Fury Cipher through this model, after it's resolved, you can charge it with 1 arc. The solos have the Arcanum modules. When you target this unit with a Cipher, you can charge it with an arc if it's not already charged. And if it's targeted by an enemy Fury, you can also charge it too. So this is a very arc-intensive faction. And a lot of their units seem to rely very heavily on that. They need the arc to do all the things they want to do. If you look at their base stats, it's not that interesting. Look at the Sabers right here down in the central right here. Speed 6, Mat Rat 3, Defense 3, Armor 3 with 1 hit point each. That's nothing special. They have a range 10 POW 3 gun and then 2 melee weapons. Well, that's not terribly exciting. But it's all these arc-based abilities that are going to be pretty cool. Their range weapon, for example, adds 2 power dice instead of 1 for each arc on the unit. It's a maximum of 1. They can potentially attack twice with many of their weapons. If you destroy a model, you can immediately make an extra attack. These are all pretty cool, and also they can spike to not have an activation token. So this is a very, more so than a lot of the other factions, it looks like the arc is going to be moving around quite a bit with these guys. And that's good, because the existing factions, I don't want to say they're stagnant on the arc, but they don't move it around as much. That's this faction's identity, is it's going to be you're moving around your arc a lot. And the rest of it looks fairly interesting too. We've got a variety of heads, a variety of weapons. We haven't seen all of them, obviously. And you know what? I'm really curious to see what this stuff looks like. I do find it interesting that they have back weapons instead of shoulder weapons. To the right, though, is the vehicle, and the vehicle is the very interesting one, because vehicles are a completely new unit going into Warcaster, and the Zenith is the only one we have rules for. It's the Empyrean vehicle. So first off, speed 8, mat rat 3-4, defense 3, armor 4. This isn't going to be a stat review because we don't have everything, but just go through it. That gives us a good idea for vehicles, though. They have pretty generic, like Warjack stats, but are really fast. The gun on this guy, it comes an ion blaster with strafe. Cool. It's got the same Arcanum module. It's got a slip displacer. It's got high intensity. Nothing on there is terribly interesting. Deployment cost 3, though, is. But the thing is maneuvers. So maneuvers are a thing that whenever a vehicle goes, it picks a maneuver to do, and that's going to give it something. In this case, Sequence Alpha does not gain an activation token at the end of its action. That's potentially very big. Those the vehicle go multiple times. You can Sequence Gamma. This model adds 1 power die to attack rolls against models with flight. My nemesis is very, very sad about this. So you get to pick a bonus effectively. Also, the vehicles have some customization. They have a weapon slot. In this case, their back costs 3, though it doesn't look like the Zenith specifies that. That's probably just future proofing. They have weapon options. So the Zenith here is going to actually probably have 2 guns. By the looks of it, yeah, looks like 2 guns. And it is worth noting that there are character vehicles coming. We're not entirely sure what that's going to do. We're pretty sure that they qualify as characters. And we know that they add an extra weapon and some extra maneuvers to their vehicle. But there should be some very interesting ones there. So vehicles, very exciting. Combos with that new race mode, which is basically you're moving across the table, and whenever you clear a section of table, you basically move the terrain up. It's kind of an interesting approach. We're going to play it. I want to really see what it is. We don't have a lot of rules for it, so there's not much I can say otherwise. This is all the Empyreans. That said, the existing factions get new toys too. On the left, we get the ISA. We're getting the Interceptor jet bike, which does include a hero. All the vehicles have a hero variant. A variant on the Morningstar, so this is just an alt sculpt on the Morningstar, but it does include a new buffet of weapons and the other 2 heads. Additionally, we're seeing the melee units for the factions show up in the case of the Marcher Worlds and the ISA. It's kind of interesting that there wasn't quite parity with that when the Continuum came out. Their base infantry squad is their melee squad. They didn't come out with their rifleman squad, which is what's coming out here now. So Paladin Defenders, we know they're a melee unit. Again, we don't have a lot of stats for any of this stuff, so I'm not going to go too deep into that. The new wild card is Dr. Myra Hurst, who I think, look, that's a fantastic model. I'm getting one just to have it. And the awesome looking Paladin Siegebreaker. Very cool looking stuff. I really, really like that Myra model. In the middle, the Eternus Continuum, my guys, we're getting a Nemesis Sculpt. It's an alt sculpt with a variety of different weapons, as well as the vehicle, the Scythe. A Vassal Raiders unit, the Raker, which we know for a fact is a unit attachment, and Harlan Sec. So the ISA got an attachment in their first wave. They're getting their big chunky solo in this wave. Everybody else got their big chunky solo in the last wave is getting their attachment in this one. So, okay, cool. So it's not quite uniform releases for everybody. I didn't really mention on the ISA end, I think the defenders are going to be fairly interesting. I also want to see what that Siegebreaker does. He's got what appears to be 2 weapons and a sword. So very curious to see what that does. I'm also want to see what that wild card does. On the AC end, the important things here are what does the squad do and what does the Raker do. The in Continuum's biggest weakness right now is their squads, and I'm very curious to see going forward what does their squad end up looking like. Once you have a Raker on there, and once you've got these new Vassal Raiders, I'm really curious to see what they've got. And the wild card who works for the Continuum is Harlan Sec. And lastly, with the Marchers, they're getting the Razorbat, which is essentially a flying Jeep. And then they're also getting their Strike Raptor, which is the alt sculpt on the heavy. More guns. I'm really interested in this double barrel thing right here. It looks really cool. See what else it does. They're getting their attachment called the Warder. We have no idea what this thing does. And they're getting the Ranger Infiltrators, which appear to be a melee unit. It sounds like they have like shape charges or something like that. And their hero's name is Corbus. What we know about this guy is he's actually an Empyrean who downloaded himself into a warjack. Which, that's a pretty cool concept right there. As I said, all of these are getting hero vehicle options. So the existing factions are getting brought up, so everyone's getting something. Everybody's going to be on the same page. And then lastly, what I think is the interesting one is the add-ons available, and they're actually selling terrain, which I think is really cool. So starting in the middle with the terrain, it's the Quartermaster Provisions Rewards one. They're coming out with objective markers for each faction. Cool. They're also coming out with scatter terrain, and I'm not sure how big this is. I really want to know how big these pieces are, but hey, scatter terrain is really good, and it's one of the things that can make something feel really thematic. The other rewards, I apologize for the blurriness of the picture if you're on this at a high scale. You can get the Metal Void Gates, which were available in the last Kickstarter, but don't appear to be a retail release. There's the vehicles. So Eradicator Nyx, which is the Zenith, Enigma, who appears to be the Scythe, Duchess, which appears to be the Interceptor, and Fiddler & Co., which is the Razorbat. We also have variant sculpts for the two Empyrean solos that are appearing in this box set, as well as a second variant for the existing factions. The Paladin, Weaver, Marauder, and the new Warden are also coming out with alt sculpts. So if you play ISA, Continuum, or Marchers, you have an alt sculpt model available to you. A very interesting note here, it's kind of hard to tell in the Warden, so I'm not going to comment there, but the Paladin Weaver pretty seems to be male, whereas the Marauder's female. It seems interesting because they seem to gender swap everything in round 1, which I thought was really cool. Not doing it here in the second wave, at least as far as I can tell. Again, maybe once I get it in person, things will look a little different. And then in addition to all this, we have mantlets, which they're described as deployable cover. They're not part of your list. They're just a thing you can summon. It might just be hey, for 1, you can summon this. And like I said, they're deployable cover. One of the issues with the game is stuff that's coming out of reserve usually isn't in a very good position defensively. Or if they are, they're usually clustered up and subject to rockets. Go see a lot of our other games if you want to see that. A lot of my AC squads have been blown apart just on the turn they arrive. The mantlets are deployable cover, which gives you some more flexibility on where you place models. And on top of that, they did say they have some kind of other ability. We don't know what that ability is, but there's something else going on with them. So, we've got that. And then over on the other side, we have the new weapon packs. The Nemesis, Strike Raptor, and Scourge are all coming out with new weapon packs, as well as the weapon packs for all of the Empyrean warjacks. And this is actually the entire Kickstarter. It's a very, I don't want to say a conservative Kickstarter, but it's not a ton of stuff. They weren't asking for as much money this time. I think the Kickstarter amount was only $80K. I'm pulling it up right now. Yeah, I think it was just $80K. Yeah. And as of the recording right now, 75,000. I'm sorry, they're at 122 and some change, so they're 160 something % done, which is really cool. Very conservative overall. They haven't shown many stretch goals beyond what's here. And most of the stretch goals they're showing tend to be fairly minor. So again, I think this is helping that if you're worried that, Kickstarter is going to kill the retail, I'm not actually convinced it is. Your stretch goals, you've got the generic social media stretch goals, which is a new scenario, a generic objective marker, and a digital library of all the cipher cards. Woo. And then they've only got stretch goals up to 200K, which is a new mat for the new game mode and its appropriate scenarios. An accessory where they will do heavy warjack loadout cards, which are they're bigger than the standard cards, but they include everything on them, which is really cool, and I really want those. As well as some more scenarios. So, there's no new models in here. There's a mat buried at 200,000, which I think is interesting. So, guys, that's been Nick with What Game Now, talking about the new Warcaster Kickstarter. I'm backing it. Let me know if you guys are. Let me know what you guys think about it. I think Warcaster is a great game, and I'm really curious to see where they go with it in the future. So with that, guys, signing off.
Hey, this is Dave. If you like what we're doing here at What Game Now, go ahead and click on one of the videos, which should be on either side of me, or click right in the middle and go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit the bell once you subscribe so that you know when we have new videos. Please go ahead and share us with your friends. Let everybody know that we're here. Thank you for watching, and thank you for all of our subscribers already. And we look forward to bringing you more content every chance that we get.